In 1312, the reigning emperor of Mali, Mansa Abu II, sent 200 manned boats and 100 support boats containing supplies to sail until they found the edge of the Atlantic. After a long excursion, one boat returned. Its captain bore only a horror story about the whirlpool that had swallowed his comrades. Unimpressed and perhaps obsessed, the emperor chose to make the expedition himself, this time with a retinue of 3,000 ships. He chose his deputy, Musa, a member of the court with no blood relation to the king, to act as ruler in his absence. Regardless of his final resting place, Mali was not destined to become a seafaring empire, and instead of the west, Musa looked to the east, with his feet firmly on dry land, the successor Mansa Musa of Mali, a king who made the world see Africa differently. A king would not only transform the world's perception of Africa, but also reveal the existence of powerful African kingdoms ruled by enlightened monarchs. This is the mysterious life of Mansa Musa, the richest man in history. The Mali Empire was a West African empire that flourished from the 13th to the 16th centuries. Founded by Sundiata Keita in 1235, and at its height, it controlled much of the territory between the Atlantic Ocean and the Niger River. Originally, it was founded out of the remains of the Ghanaian Empire. The Mali Empire reached a height of strength during the reign of Mansa Musa. Expansion of the Mali Empire stretched across Western Africa from the Atlantic Ocean to Timbuktu, including surrounding areas stretching an empire over 2,000 miles across. Its wealth was derived from its control of the trans-Saharan gold trade. The empire also controlled important trade routes that connected West Africa with North Africa and the Mediterranean world, the land of gold and salt, where caravans traveled from all over the world to trade their goods. One of the greatest rulers of Mali was Mansa Musa. He was a wise and ambitious king who led his empire into a golden age, a pure, devout Muslim, and he dreamed of making Mali a center of Islamic learning and culture. Mansa Musa put Mali firmly on the international stage with his famous pilgrimage to Mecca and visit to Cairo in 1324. Before we go any further, let's see how the early life looked for the Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa was born in 1280 into a wealthy and powerful family in the Mali Empire. Mansa Musa gained the throne after his predecessor, Mansa Abu Bakr II, sailed out into the Atlantic with a large fleet of ships and was never seen again. Exploration's loss was Mali's gain, and Mansa Musa, nominated to rule while Abu Bakr II satisfied his curiosity as to what lay over the horizon, would become one of the greatest rulers in the entire history of Africa. With an army numbering around 100,000 men, including an armored cavalry corps of 10,000 horses, and with the talented General Saramandian, Mansa Musa was able to extend and maintain Mali's vast empire, doubling its territory and making it second in size only to that of the Mongol Empire at the time. Mansa Musa inherited a kingdom that was already wealthy, but his work in expanding trade made Mali the wealthiest kingdom in Africa. He immediately began to implement his vision for the empire. He expanded the military, built new roads and bridges, and promoted trade and commerce. Patronizing the arts and sciences, he helped transform the city of Timbuktu into a major center of Islamic learning. Mansa Musa spent his early life studying and preparing for his future role as king. He was educated in the Quran, Islamic law, and the history and culture of the Mali Empire. He acquired proficiency in multiple languages, such as Arabic, Manding, and Bambara. But what really made Mansa Musa famous was his pilgrimage to Mecca. In 1324, Musa, like many other devout Mali rulers before and after, set off for a pilgrimage to Mecca, located in what is now Saudi Arabia, that all Muslims are expected to complete at least once. He chose to go overland, an unsurprising choice, given the fate of his predecessor. He traveled at least 6,000 miles along the caravan routes that formed one of the most important trading links of his empire, taking him along the Maghreb to Egypt and from Egypt on to Mecca. Musa journeyed in style, and people took note. The emperor took with him 60,000 people, many of whom were drawn from his military, and 12,000 of whom were slaves. All wore expensive brocade fabrics and silks, and carried gold bars. 500 slaves marched ahead of Musa as he rode. each carrying a staff of pure gold. 80 camels traveled alongside, carrying his spending money in the form of gold dust. Other reports, though less substantial and substantiated, suggest that he also traveled with horses and elephants. When his second wife complained of the desert dust, Musa ordered a complex irrigation system be built, consisting of dozens of meters of oiled trenches to fill her bathtub. As he went, he continued to demonstrate both Islam's importance to him personally and its value as a connective diplomatic asset. The fact that the emperor had taken leave of his throne to journey to Mecca was already impressive, but Musa underscored it by famously having a mosque built wherever his train halted on a Friday. But when he arrived in Cairo in July of that year en route, he caused an absolute sensation. The Mali ruler's camel caravan had crossed the Sahara, and when he arrived in Egypt, even the Sultan was astounded by the wealth this West African king had brought with him. In some accounts, each of 100 camels carried 135 kilos or 300 pounds of gold dust, while 500 slaves each brandished a 2.7 kilo, 6 pounds gold staff. In addition, there were hundreds of other camels loaded down with foodstuffs and textiles, horse riders waving the huge red and gold banners of the king, and an impressive human entourage of servants and officials that numbered in the tens of thousands. He was a liberal tipper. Reports indicate that the emperor gave away 20,000 gold pieces in each of Cairo, Mecca, and Medina, as well as buying trinkets and souvenirs at any asking price. In an extreme gesture of largesse, Mansa Musa would give away so much gold and his entourage spend so much shopping in the markets of the city that the value of gold dinar in Cairo crashed by 20% in relation to the silver dirham. It would take 12 years for the flooded gold market to recover. The injection of gold into the Egyptian economy dramatically depreciated the metal's value, and prices of goods soared as the economy tried to adjust. The merchants of Egypt, in particular, were delighted with all these naive tourists suddenly milling about their markets, and they took full advantage, raising their prices and relieving the shoppers of their gold at any opportunity. On his return journey, Musa attempted to fix the hyperinflation he had wrought by borrowing back as much of the gold he had given as possible. Moneylenders in Cairo, delighted at the opportunity, charged enormous rates of interest. The value of gold recovered and prices returned to normal, until Musa made it back to Mali. He quickly repaid his debts, plus interest, in a single enormous payment. Moneylenders' businesses collapsed as the price of gold plummeted once more. Mansa Musa, with his casual display of unimaginable wealth, had ruined, repaired, and ruined again the gold economy of Africa and the Middle East, and by extension, that of Europe. The king of Mali had given 50,000 gold dinars to the Sultan of Egypt merely as a first-meeting gesture. The Sultan was rather ignoble in return and insisted that Mansa Musa kiss the ground in homage. In all other respects, though, this ruler from Africa's mysterious interior was treated like the royalty he was, given a palace for his 3-month stay, and lauded wherever he went. An indication of the impression Mansa Musa had made is that news of his Cairo visit eventually reached Europe. Musa's international prestige soared. His expedition literally put him on the map. In Spain, a mapmaker was inspired to create Europe's first detailed map of West Africa. Created in 1375, the map, part of the Catalan Atlas, has Mansa Musa sitting regally on a throne, wearing an impressive gold crown and holding a golden staff in one hand and, somewhat gleefully, a huge nugget or orb of gold in the other. Mali boasted such abundance that one legend described it as a place of gold producing plants whose nuggets were harvested like carrots. It was Africa's El Dorado. It was such tales of gold that would inspire later European explorers to brave disease, warlike tribes, and inhospitable terrain to find the fabled riches of Timbuktu, the golden city of the desert that nobody quite knew where to place on the map, even in the 18th century. After Cairo, Mansa Musa would travel on to Arabia, where he purchased land and houses so that pilgrims from Mali who followed in his footsteps might have a place to stay. The king was inspired by the holy sights he saw there, and on his return to Mali, he built a dazzling audience chamber at Niani and mosques at Gao and Timbuktu. These included the Great Mosque, in the latter city, also known as Djingarabere. The buildings were designed by the famous architect Ishaq al-Tuwaijin from Andalusian Granada, who had been enticed from Cairo following Mansa Musa's visit there. The inducement included 200 kilos of gold, slaves, and a swath of land along the Niger River. The mosque was completed by 1330, and al-Tuwaijin lived the rest of his life in Mali. A royal palace, or Madugu, was built in the capital city, and Timbuktu, along with fortification walls to protect the latter city against raids by the Tuareg, the nomads of the southern Sahara. Due to the lack of stone in the region, Mali buildings were typically constructed using beaten earth, banco, reinforced with wood, which often sticks out in beams from the exterior surfaces. Mecca at the time was a who's who of significant figures and fertile ground for a recruitment drive. The Islamic world's finest thinkers and rulers gathered in Mecca, and it was an opportunity for Musa, the man of the hour, to further build his prestige by introducing them to the Malian Empire. Musa exploited the opportunity, absorbing poets, architects, mathematicians, and philosophers into his escort for the journey home. He also acquired 4 sharifs, descendants of the Prophet Muhammad, who returned to Mali with him. Musa had united 2 of Mali's most prominent characteristics: the importance of Islam and the importance of its trade routes. With his pilgrimage, the presence of the sharifs encouraged further trade with the Muslim world, as did the new trade routes that he and his caravan established along the way. Musa's Hajj was a spiritual exercise, but also one in building intangible institutions that would cement the empire's dominance with an absence of violence that ran counter to medieval tradition. Musa was slightly ahead of his time, though his preference for terrestrial travel made him an outlier. Despite his wealth and power, few European states had heard of the Mansa before his pilgrimage. In the Middle Ages, information traveled slowly and often needed something of a kickstart. Reputation was a valuable thing. Rumors of economic strength attracted trade and tribute, and a reputation for military might was as useful as a standing. As valuable as rumors may be, sometimes the best way to introduce yourself was in person, and so began the Golden Age of exploration. In 1405, the Ming government sponsored the first overseas expeditions from China. Columbus, famously, set sail from Spain in 1492. All sought roughly the same thing Musa did: growth. States worldwide were reaching the point at which growth and development could only be maintained through contact with other cultures. In some cases, including Musa's, the goal was cooperation and mutually beneficial exchanges of goods and thought. Others broke from their isolation, intent upon hostile takeovers. One of Musa's adopted pilgrims was Abu Ishaq, also known as al-Sahili, an Andalusian poet and architect. Al-Sahili's journey reflects Musa's talent for attracting individuals in Mecca and bridging Mali with influential centers like Europe and the Middle East. Al-Sahili initially hailed from Andalusia, Spain, where he thrived as a poet and legal document writer. Leaving Andalusia amid a scandal, his travels led him through Egypt, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and finally the Hajj that brought him to Musa's attention. Musa, drawn to al-Sahili's knowledge of Islamic law, brought him to Mali, aiming to refine and codify the empire's legal structures. Unexpectedly, al-Sahili made his mark in architecture, overseeing the construction of a royal chamber and designing Timbuktu's iconic Djingarabere Mosque. Some speculate he introduced burnt brick construction to West Africa, revolutionizing the region's architecture. Al-Sahili settled in Timbuktu, working as both an architect and scholar. He may have played a diplomatic role, forging a positive relationship with the Marinid Sultan, Abu al-Hassan, even encouraging him to wage war against Tlemcen. Musa reciprocated with gifts and congratulations, furthering Mali's interests. In this complex web of diplomacy and skill exchange, al-Sahili served as a valuable intermediary, rewarded generously with Malian gold by Musa, showcasing Musa's ability to translate tangible wealth into intangible benefits. During Musa's pilgrimage to Mecca, his trusted general, Sagamandia, expanded Mali's territories by marching against neighboring regions. Upon Musa's return, Mali had grown significantly, with the most notable addition being the city of Timbuktu. Musa's influence transformed Timbuktu from a small desert settlement into a bustling trade hub strategically positioned on the Malian Empire's desert frontier. This economic prosperity was remarkable, but Timbuktu's true success lay in intellectual development. What Musa did, there may seem mundane today, but was one of the greatest contemporary exercises in state building. He left in Timbuktu a number of the most prominent Muslim scholars of the era, freshly recruited at Mecca, and ordered the construction of the Djinguereber Mosque, still Timbuktu's most significant historical site, enhancing the existing Sankore Mosque, transforming it into a university with a vast collection of texts. The city boasted numerous other mosques functioning as centers of learning, and it's estimated to have housed over 1 million books, solidifying Timbuktu as a citadel of knowledge. Sankore was by no means the only center of learning in Timbuktu. There were other mosques acting as universities and countless private libraries. Some estimate that the city was home to over 1 million books. Musa's investment in education strengthened Mali's Islamic identity, promoting Quranic studies and Arabic language learning, binding diverse cultures under a common Islamic identity. Timbuktu facilitated cultural exchanges, sending scholars abroad and welcoming prominent thinkers, further enhancing Mali's reputation in the wider Arabic world. The educational system in Timbuktu covered a broad range of subjects, from history to mathematics and science, with access to books considered a social obligation. The codification of Malian legal structures in Timbuktu marked a significant shift from oral transmission, ensuring rights for the population and increasing the legitimacy of the state. Timbuktu's reputation grew quickly. In 1375, it was also included in the Catalan Atlas, only 50 years after Musa's arrival. The city's legacy may have been Musa's greatest victory, though its rewards were more nebulous, multifaceted, and durable than the gold upon which Mali had previously relied. In addition, the empire now exported thought, culture, and an imperial narrative that, according to the limited sources left to scholars, was a source of pride and identity for its citizens. The death of Mansa Musa. Perhaps Musa's greatest talent lay in his artful construction of narratives and institutions, and there may be no greater evidence for this than the way Malian history unraveled after his death. The mere fact that there is recorded history from his reign in an era when chronicling relied upon storytelling, rumor, and reputation is a testament to his imperial legacy. Equally telling is the fact that we have no idea how or when he died, though history's best guess, based on his final acts of diplomacy, places it around 1337. Musa took the Malian Empire to its peak. Although Mansa Musa represented a high point, Mali endured long after his death around 1337 AD. Poor leadership and civil war caused it to fall apart in the 1460s, making way for the Songhai Empire to the east. Mali didn't disappear entirely, however, holding on to diminished territories in the west until the 17th century, when it fell apart after its capital was sacked by the Bamana Empire.